Welcome to Vital Refinement, episode 3. This is Eareoke, Ari, your future muse. People know me by different names these days, but this is episode 3 of Vital Refinement, and I'm talking about the third thing that I learned from 2020. Now, if you haven't listened to my other episodes, I'm basically doing a recap of things that I learned in 2020. I know that I released a video before talking about these things, but I'm breaking them down into different videos so they're a little bit more easier to digest because watching a 20 or 30-minute video can be hard for some folks. So I decided to break them down into episodes. And then from here, I will also be contributing my insight on things that I learned in 2021. So, this episode is about the third thing that I learned in 2020, which was the patience with God's timing. So, I really learned true patience with God's timing in 2020. This was by far one of the most things I was grateful for in 2020 because as I mentioned before in the previous episode, when I talk about how I was weak in faith, it's something else that, is always preached to us that people always make a habit of saying, but not necessarily live out what they're preaching. So for me, I do feel like I go through phases or stages or cycles or whatever you want to call it of being patient but also trying to rush God. So especially throughout my adulthood, when I really started understanding, I learned new on how it can be consistent in my life. So instead of going through these cycles of like rushing and trying to play things out on my own accord and like claiming I waited on God, but really not waiting on God. So 2020 really taught me a lot around that. Um, and especially because of the circumstances we were under, between me being unemployed for a while to me working from home and us just being in quarantine and isolated. It really just, like what many people are saying across the world, like God just told us to sit down, be still, and um, He did it in such a major way. And I really valued learning those things during that time. It allowed me to learn how to be patient to myself, towards myself, and really uh, took time to realize how I can also be more patient with God um, and His timing, right? So, one of the biggest lessons I took out of this larger lesson of patience and timing was that how I applied it to my my business. So for years, I knew I wanted to create something. I knew I wanted to start a business. I knew I wanted to do something outside of my 9 to 5 work. And God allowed me to do that. I know many people during this time did open a business because, like, opportunity, um, they really need the money. People have different reasons, but for me, my reason was opportunity and just God's timing and saying, like, hey, like, you've always put this on a back burner because you're in school. I prioritize school, or I prioritized work or family, friends, like all this other stuff I have involved in my life that I always put like my passion, my interest, um, my goals and regarding my career on the back burner. And when I say career, I mean like ultimately working for myself. So I really took that as an opportunity to embrace it and really tune into understanding God's timing and also being patient with myself during that time. Like, it took everything in me to be patient with myself because I was really, like I spoke about before, doubting myself. I didn't have much trust in myself and the decisions I was making, and also just kind of beating myself up because there was just there was like this big thing. I'm sure all of you have heard it during the pandemic. Like, if you didn't learn a new skill, if you didn't do this, if you ain't did this during the quarantine, like, what are you doing with your life? And so there were some days where I wasn't as motivated, or I did procrastinate, or did, you know, take it a lot slower. And I would beat myself like, man, you have all this time in your day. You have, a stable home. You're safe. You're healthy. Like, there's really no reason why you should just be sitting around, right? I have to remind myself that I honestly was struggling mentally and spiritually a lot during that time. And I just allowed myself to have a lot more grace for myself, and be more patient with myself. And God taught me that during that time, to not only hold patience with His timing, but patience for myself. So that's the third thing I learned during 2020 was what it really feels like to wait on God and be patient with His perfect timing, and how I can allow myself to be patient for myself, with myself. Um, and I think that lesson alone has really contributed to my growth overall this past 2 years of um, the journey I've been on with my mental health and my physical health and my overall well being. A lot of what I learned from that moment with God was is easily seen in my daily living now, and it's so much healthier for me. It's way easier for me to be a lot more positive because of that lesson I learned of how to be patient with myself and how to be understanding. So, this was episode 3 of what I learned in 2020. I hope you can relate to it. I hope that you can also learn how to be patient with God's timing, be patient with yourself, um, just be consistent, be persistent with it, you know, just continue going and continue applying it until it becomes something natural, and your well-being will be so much better. Um, Thank you for listening. Like I say all the time, leave a like, leave a comment, share with anyone you think could be relative to. I really would love to know what y'all have learned throughout this pandemic, between 2020, 2021. Like, we're all here to just grow, and I'm just opening up so I can be transparent about the things that I've learned in these last few years, and the transitions that I've been making, and the corrections I've been making, and the steps I've been taking to really try to refine my life, my habits, so I can have the best well being, right? So, take care, stay healthy, and lots of love. Um, Hopefully, you tune in for the next episode.